What up, though? Welcome back to World Heavyweights Live on WorldSports.com. I'm Easy. That's Spimo Rex.
What up, though?
We are joined by PFF's go-to. I say he's their MVP at this point. Our guy, Trevor Sikkema, joined the show. Appreciate you taking the time, man.
I appreciate you guys having me. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, one more time.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me.
No problem, man. Real quick, because we had you on Part League. Obviously, you released your quarterback list, and we cover here in Detroit. You know I've had some
nothing notable on there, I'm sure, that we're not going to get into here on this show.
But just real quick, because my partner and I, we kind of been arguing about the best dual threat quarterback in NFL history. I personally, once upon a time, had Steve Young. I put Patrick Mahomes there just because he does win running and throwing. My guy here next to me has Josh Allen. What was your take on the matter?
Yeah, I had Josh Allen because I think Josh Allen is equally as good with his legs and his arm. Like, he is a freak of nature with both that we haven't seen.
Yeah. I mean, like, Josh Allen's pretty special, right? I mean, like, even going back to his draft class when he was coming out of Wyoming, Josh was so inefficient. Like, he was so non-consistent that it was almost crazy to take him in the top 10. But the only reason why you do it is because of kind of what you're talking about there. It's just, he's a rare talent. Like, the physical gifts that this guy has, whether it's the crazy arm power or whether just it's the overall athletic ability at his size, he is a true dual threat. And I think that, like, now we kind of talk about him like that, but, you know, when we think of, like, oh, who are some of the top, like, dual threat quarterbacks, you know, of all time, a lot of people talk about Michael Vick, they'll talk about Lamar Jackson, but, like, Josh Allen, I think, is in that conversation because of everything that he can bring to the table. It's not just players back there who can run 60, 70 yards down the field, right? It's the ones who can continually get you first downs, can continually put stresses on defense. Like, that's a dual threat quarterback as well. And Josh and Jalen Hurts as well. Like, those are two dudes who last year, so many first downs picked up with their legs where, like, the defense has just got to go, what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do against this guy? And anytime that's the case, you know, you got an elite dual threat player on your hands. Yeah. So Josh is one of those guys.
Like, the guy had 15 rushing touchdowns last year.
Who's number one all time for you?
I mean, I grew up watching Michael Vick, and, like, Michael Vick was, like, the most electrifying player I've ever seen. So I feel like he's my default answer. But again, we've got such special players right now. Like, Josh Allen, if he continues to go in this direction, like, he's putting himself in that category. I mean, Lamar, we've already seen Lamar win 2 MVPs. Like, he's already certainly within that category as well. And so it's always tough to kind of, like, quantify or match up, like, dual threat dudes, because there's a difference between, like, explosiveness and efficiency. And I think there's some guys where, like you mentioned, like Steve Young or like Patrick Mahomes, again, like, nobody's looking at Patrick Mahomes and saying, like, oh, this dude's a blazer down the field. But like you said, he's so annoying with his athleticism, where, again, you think that you think you've got to beat. You think you've got it all covered. It's hard enough to cover the passing game with Mahomes. And then he just does the pump fake thing where the tongue is, like, hanging out the side of his mouth and he just slides for a 6-yard first down. And oh, look, there it is again. So, yeah, I think that those guys are kind of in that category, and I'd have to continue to think about some of the great dual threats. I feel like we were robbed of RG3, obviously, like, with his injury, but he could have been a special one as well. Yeah, dude, and Luck was
that's
like
a good one.
Allen, right? Like, where he was just so powerful and so athletic. Like, Luck and RG3, both of those guys in that conversation if they get fully healthy careers.
That's a great one to bring up, Andrew Luck. Obviously, we brought you on to talk quarterbacks. We got into a little bit there, but real quick, I guess what were the criteria to make the list? Because our guy JG fell at 16, and a lot of our audience is kind of upset about it.
Yeah, no, this is the one that I've gotten the most pushback on, and I knew I would, right? I mean, look, Jared Goff's in that tier of, I call it a melting pot of starters, where when you put quarterbacks in tiers, like, everybody likes to focus on where they are, like the number that's next to them. But in reality, the tier that they are in, the bucket they are in, matters more than the list. Because if somebody wants to talk to me about what Jared Goff brings to the table and how efficient he is and how much he's won over the last couple of years and where he's had this offense going, how it has elevated with him at quarterback, there's a lot of stuff where I go, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. But when it comes to kind of making differences and having those numerical rankings, I have to sort of pick categories. And for me, I'm a draft guy, so I'm a talent evaluator. So a lot of times when I'm going to evaluate players, quarterbacks included, what I believe of a total overall talent level is going to go into the account. And I understand Jared Goff, former #1 overall pick, but certainly in Detroit, he hasn't been as explosive as a passer as he was when he was with the Los Angeles Rams. And when he was with the Rams, there was a lot of McVay kind of crutches, seems like a hard word, but he was so successful in that McVay system. And then when he got to Detroit, it took a little bit of time. And I even say in the article, like, I've got him at 16, but he had a really great year last season. It was his best in terms of big time throw percentage and turnover worthy plays, which are two PFF metrics that we love, that I reference a lot. So when you talk about that criteria and kind of identifying maybe difference makers between guys who are in the same tier, a lot of times, total big time throws, but more importantly, big time throw percentage and turnover worthy play percentage, they mean a lot, because to me, that tells you how many times you were making crucial clutch throws that make impacts in the game in a positive way, which we categorize as those big time throws, and how little are you putting the ball in harm's way? How much are you avoiding negatives? Both contextual stats and contextual data points mean a lot. And so for Goff, he had one of his best. In fact, he had his best year as a Detroit Lion last year. And yet the big time throw percentage was still around 3.4%. Now, to give you some context with that versus the other quarterbacks that are a little bit ahead of him, you talk about some of those guys that are in the top 10, their big time throw percentage is 5, sometimes 6, even 7s for some of the best that are having crazy good years. And for Goff, that 3.4%, it was his best in Detroit, but it was still much lower than it was for some of these other quarterbacks. So I hate to knock the guy because he's been unbelievably efficient. And certainly him and Ben Johnson have really good chemistry together as a quarterback, offensive coordinator, and play caller duo. But when I'm trying to rank these quarterbacks and to say, okay, if I pick you out of this situation, like this is the Brock Purdy situation too. If I take you out of this situation and I put you on a team of average offensive line, average receivers, average running back, maybe average play caller, how much do you elevate that entire group? And that's what I try to do here. And yeah, it's subjective. So there's always going to be some give and take, some arguments, some back and forth, some opinions one way or the other. But for Jared Goff, I think he's really great within the structure that he has in Detroit. He clearly puts on a really great show on the offense that's in front of him. But when you pressure him, when you get him off of his spot, when you make him scramble, that's when you see the play really drop from him. And then when he gets off script, you just don't see that off script success with him as much as you do a couple of the other guys that are a little bit ahead of him.
And I actually agree with you. That's why at a certain point when I ranked Jordan Love over him, and I was getting backlash, I had to reach out to you because I know you're like a non-biased. Like, am I crazy here? And you kind of helped me confirm that too. I want to ask one thing because I'd seen that a lot of times in the explanations on the list, the big time throw rate. Can you explain that for the audience?
Yeah, so big time throws are subjective, and they're subjective for a reason, right? Some people kind of don't like the fact that PFF doesn't have like a hard and fast definition of a big time throw, but we do that on purpose. Like it is our eyes, but we try to train the people who are doing the grades and our data collectors who are making the data points to kind of understand what they are watching. And a big time throw is a loose definition of it is a throw that is further down the field, that is within tight coverage, and sometimes the in-game situation also means a lot to that. And the reason why we don't want to just say, okay, big time throws are throws that are completed of 20 yards or more, where the ball is traveling at least 20 yards in the air and goes for a handful of yards after the catch. It means you put it really on them, so they were able to continue their momentum. The reason why we don't want that definition to be so hard is because, okay, well, what about fourth quarter, third down, 6 yard to gain? This guy's ripping it over the middle between two linebackers for a 10-yard gain, and the drive keeps going and you keep marching down the field. Like, that can be a big time throw as well. So really, it is a little bit ambiguous. It is a little bit subjective, but essentially it is what the title is supposed to really represent. And that is a throw that was a big time difference maker, either at that point in the game or really was just a beautiful pinpoint accurate pass that was able to get lots of yards after the catch, or right in between some tight coverage. Like, that's really what we are looking for to categorize those throws that mean a lot, which again, kind of show you what does a quarterback specifically do here? Because even if a play caller calls a really great play, if a quarterback is still putting a dime on him 30 yards down the field, well, sure, it was a great play that dialed up, but we're giving the quarterback credit for that. And so that's kind of what big time throws are in PFF system. Again, I know it's a little bit subjective, but we do that for a reason, to try to make sure that there's better stats to reference than just, oh, touchdowns and interceptions and yards.
And that's why I didn't have the biggest vendetta with this list as 99% of our fan base did, like our listeners, but because some of the lists that really made me mad is when I see Goff at 15 and 17, and then Brock Purdy at 4,
Yes,
or Tua Tagovailoa at 7. That's why because I talk about Goff as that type of range of that 8 to 13 in the NFL range, where I put in Tua and Purdy and that type of player. So like you said, with the tiers and the groupings, that's where I could be like, okay, he's a little lower than I would have put him, but since he's around those guys, I can't be too mad about it.
Yeah, and yeah, like you said, like it's that category. I think I had Tua at 14, I had Brock Purdy at 13, and I think I had Kirk Cousins at 15. Like that's a pretty good group that's kind of like sitting right there. And again, if I'm talking to somebody and they say, hey, I'd take Jared Goff over Brock Purdy. Well, I mean, we could have a little bit of a discussion of, okay, well, what are you pointing to that puts Jared Goff over Brock Purdy? But I wanted to be consistent with like what you said. I'm not going to look at what Purdy has done over the last couple of years and just go, oh, he's a winner. He's got to be in the top 10. I've got him at 13. And I even say in my blurb about Brock Purdy, I'm pretty confident about where I have him at 13 because I think it actually gives him credit for what he has done, overcoming his draft position, having success in what is, I'm going to be honest with you, probably the most quarterback-friendly situation I've ever seen in my life. Like, he's still doing those things, so I don't want to totally take it away from him. And just like with Jared Goff, man, I think that Ben Johnson's a great play caller. They got a great offensive line. They've got good running backs. Amon-Ra St. Brown's a stud. Sam Laporta is as well. Like, but I don't want to take it away from him, the fact that he is on that offense. So ultimately, you just try to look at individual traits, you know, when things kind of are out of structure, maybe not as in rhythm. You want to be able to weigh both things, what happens in structure and out of structure. And unfortunately for Goff on this rankings, the out of structure stuff for him was more lacking than it was for the guys who are a little bit higher than him on this list.
Yeah, the thing for me too is that's how I grade my quarterbacks as well. I like to take them out of the situation they were in and grade it with context. One guy, probably the guy I had the biggest disagreement with on the list, was actually Dak Prescott, just because the context. I know he had an amazing season last year, and I get that. But the context of surrounding that amazing season, they played a lot of bad teams, and they only beat one team above 500, if I'm not mistaken. And it was us on questionably the biggest call of the season with Brad Allen and the 2-point conversion situation. What is it about Dak that allows him to be in the top 10, I guess, versus some guys I think are better than him?
Dak's just so impressive, man. And I'll be honest, like I've really loved Dak's game for a while now. I feel like he gets naturally, as a Dallas Cowboys quarterback, he gets a lot of hate, especially when you don't have a lot of success in the postseason. And Dak has this dark cloud over him, not just last year, but we'll get to last year in a second, but just overall, man. I mean, he just has not had any playoff success, certainly compared to the success that he's had in the regular season. But last year, his regular season was so elite. I mean, he was number one in big time throws. I think that he was number one in turnover worthy play percentage. Like, he had the highest big time throw percentage. He had the lowest turnover worthy play percentage, or if it wasn't the highest or lowest exactly, it was either 1 or 2. He was right there for those statistics. He was unbelievably efficient last year, both with his arm and his legs. Yeah, he wasn't going up against the best competition, but this is somebody who should have gotten like MVP looks. Now, it was never going to go to anybody other than Lamar Jackson. I'm not saying that it shouldn't have, but you know, we were going through some exercises last year on the PFF NFL show, and it was like, hey, you know, if you had a dark horse for these awards, who would it be? And mine was without question Dak Prescott, because of how good his 2023 was. And I say this in the article with ranking him at number 6. It truly sucks that they were as bad as they were. And when I say they, I mean particularly Prescott in that playoff game, because even if they would have just lost the playoff game, like an average playoff loss, sure, it's Dak, so those conversations if he can't win in the playoffs would continue, but he was so bad to start that playoff game that it's like, come on, man. You had 17 games where you were brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
I know it wasn't the best competition, but like, brilliant stuff, MVP level stuff. And it's just, man, it cannot translate into the postseason right now. So look, I had him at number 6 because to me, it was the same thing as giving Lamar Jackson the nod at number 2 on the list over Josh Allen and Joe Burrow of, okay, I cannot take away from the magic that was that 2023 season. I got to give you the benefit of the doubt in how that went for you. So that's ultimately why I had Dak at the top of technically tier 3, if you count the Mahomes singular tier at the very top. That's why I had him at the top of that tier 3 instead of maybe a little bit further down towards where CJ Stroud and Jalen Hurts were.
Yeah, and looking at Jared Goff and what he did last year, we talk about the way the ball comes out of his hand. In some spots, it doesn't look too great, but it gets there. It gets to the spot, and it normally gets to the guy and puts him in a good situation. And I actually saw a lot of throws from Goff that I didn't see in previous years with the Lions, where he was threading it between a couple guys. He was putting it over the middle to open spots for receivers. And next year, he has a guy that everyone is expecting to take a leap and be an important part of this offense in Jameson Williams. So with more downfield shots, more over the middle, quick attacking, shots in this offense, would that be able to rise Jared Goff through the ranks of this list?
Yeah, 100%. Because, if I'm going to sit here and say, like, all right, well, Jared Goff's playing very efficient. Like you guys mentioned, he's playing very confident. Again, all the numbers suggest that last year was his best as a Detroit Lion. If he adds a true, reliable speed weapon in Jameson Williams, whether it's, over the middle of the field with a lot of yards after catch opportunities or deep down the field with a lot of extra air yards, those are the things that I'm kind of criticizing right now, that if Jameson Williams solves some of those or gets that big time throw percentage to, 4.8, 4.9, something around 5%. Yeah, this guy's going to jump to probably the very top of this tier. And maybe you're talking about him in that fringe top 10 area. You guys mentioned rank 8 through 13. I think that that's very fair to say of Jared Goff, that he can sneak into that top 10 if Jameson Williams really kind of holds the key in that area for him. So yeah, I mean, the answer is absolutely. And I was talking with some Lion fans earlier this week where that's kind of also what came up is, I'm not afraid to move him up this list if I can say, yes, he is definitively getting better or was definitively had a great year in an area where I kind of vocalized some concerns about him previously. So there's no doubt about it. He can jump up there with a big year from Jameson Williams too.
Trevor, I also want to ask you, I guess just the status of this NFC North, in your opinion. The Bears quite possibly took a huge leap. It terrifies you, to be honest with you. Caleb Williams, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, on top of a guy that already was giving us issues, and DJ Moore. And now you have Jordan Love and his emergence, and all the guys he did it with were second to first-year players. You all expect those guys to take leaps. How do you see the future of this NFC North?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a really, really fun division. I mean, the Bears have been getting better and better over the last couple of seasons, and now Caleb Williams really was that final piece of the puzzle. So I'm really excited about this. I think outside of Jared Goff, the player who I got the most pushback on is having Caleb Williams at number 19, because there's two ways that you can do these rankings, especially when you're ranking all 32 of a starter in a certain situation, especially quarterbacks. You can either say, hey, I'm just going to put all of the rookies at the very end of the list and say, haven't started an NFL game yet. Not going to put anybody over them because we don't know. And I'm a draft guy, but I'll admit, there are plenty of times where guys fail with just getting into the league, even though we have super high expectations for them or hopes for them. So I totally recognize that. But on the other side of the coin, I am a draft guy, and I'm sitting here talking about how good and how talented these guys are for so many months. It would be disingenuous for me to say, okay, well, now that they are in the NFL, where would I stack them up against other quarterbacks? How do I think they are going to play in 2024? And that is where at number 19, I felt like Caleb Williams deserved to be because of what we have seen at USC and the expectations that I have of him for the upcoming season. So look, I think the Bears are definitely going to take a step forward. I think it is realistic to believe that the NFC North could have 3 playoff teams this year. I don't think the Packers or the Bears are overtaking the Detroit Lions. They're still my solidified favorite to win that division, and they should be, especially after having an excellent offseason, which they were the only team that I gave an A+ to from this offseason. And so I think that they're a good team that I should say they're a great team that I feel like got even better. Their Super Bowl window was open. I still have them at the top of the division, but there's no doubt about it. You're getting into some dogfights with the Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers this year.
And Trevor, we see your Twitter handle there at the bottom, Tampa Bay Trey, and the Lions made some improvements on their defense, especially in the secondary. A guy that we got from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Carlton Davis through a trade is supposed to play a big role. He's supposed to be the cornerback one on this roster going forward, as long as Terrion and Ennis Rakeshaw continue to develop their rookie seasons. What can Lions fans expect out of Carlton Davis, and what did you see from him when he was in Tampa Bay?
I don't know about that. Terrion Arnold's wearing number 0, so I think he's CB1 until he proves otherwise just from swag alone. But I think that Carlton has the talent ceiling to be a CB1 in this league, and we saw that when the Bucs were on their Super Bowl run. Carlton was playing really, really well. He is that. I think that he can play both styles. He can play as a cover 3 press coverage defender, but he can also play as a man coverage press coverage defender. And so he gives them a lot of versatility. The thing with Davis, and the reason why the Bucs were willing to part ways with him, is just because he's gone through some injuries over the last couple of years, and the play has just been a little too much up and down for them, right? I think that that's why they were willing to move on, and it's also why the Lions were willing to take the chance, right? Because they looked at their cornerback group last year and they said, we have to get better. So a way to do that, I love bringing in Amik Robinson. I love bringing back Emmanuel Mosley, who I liked a lot before he got hurt at the end of last year. You draft 2 studs in Arnold, who I think you start right away, and Rakestraw, who I think could be a long-term starter for you. But then Carlton Davis is right there, and not only is he somebody who's proven it in this league, he has that postseason experience. He has that Super Bowl experience. And so to me, it made sense but this was a trade that was, the rare win on both sides, because Tampa wasn't exactly there, and I think they had some corners that were waiting in the wings that they are comfortable with now in starting positions, that they were willing to move on with him and get his contract off of their books. But the Lions, they said, okay, well, we'll easily pay that to hopefully get the high end of Carlton, knowing what he has already done in this league. So if he is fully healthy, he does have that CB1 type of ability, although the consistency just hasn't been there over the last couple of years.
Trevor, man, I appreciate you taking the time to stop by the show. Any articles? By the way, before people kill Trevor, he got us the best postseason grade in terms of acquisitions. I saw us on the top of that list. Appreciate you for that one. And we can still win a Super Bowl without JG being considered a top 5 guy. Right? It's cool.
The city is very defensive when it comes to Jared Goff.
Look, they should be, man. Y'all have the winning window is wide open right now. They are right on the doorstep. They don't want to hear the negativity, and I totally get it. But look, you had an A draft from me. You had an A+ offseason. You asked what's coming down the pipe. I've got an edge rusher ranking all the best edge rushers in the NFL. I got Aiden at number 6, behind only, Max Crosby, TJ Watt, Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett, and Micah Parsons. So I got him at number 6. So they can't hate me with that one either. And I just, look, they're doing so many fantastic things that Jared Goff, if he's got to be 16 on the list, and that's the worst thing that you can write about the Lions during the offseason, y'all are doing pretty good, and I think that Super Bowl is still within reach.
Appreciate you, man. Coming out with a new podcast with your partner in crime there on the stock exchange?
Yes, we are. For any NFL draft nuts out there, we are getting back to summer scouting starting next week. We're going to start with the quarterback position.
Sicko
We're
mode.
going to take a look at, dude, 100%. Look, I started watching these quarterbacks. I started watching these quarterbacks last Monday, just because I had the itch, and I got done with my first like summer scouting report, and I was just like, oh, that's the good stuff, baby. Like that's what we were waiting for there. So yeah, we got a summer filled with really great NFL draft content for everybody that wants to hang out over at the NFL Stock Exchange show on YouTube.
Trevor, appreciate you joining us so much, man. We got to get you on again. Thanks for all the knowledge. And the chats, they loved what you said about Aiden, but they're still not forgiving you for the Goff slander.
That's okay. I'll still be rooting for the Lions from afar, even though you guys won't let me into the closest of the club. I still love the Lions. I'd love to see them get one. So let's see what 2024 holds. Appreciate you, fellas.
Thank you so much, Trevor.
Shout out to Trevor taking the time to join us. Trevor. One thing that we've spoken on in the past too is, I'm telling you guys, DJ Reader. Aiden Hutchinson 6 on that list because he knows it's coming.
Yes. 17.5. I said 17.5 for Aiden. We saw Trey Hendrickson get that. Why do you think Trey Hendrickson wants his deal now? Because DJ Reader's out of there.